definitely creating content that helps people is really the solution.
What really works is building a community, consistently doing events like webinars, and producing content specifically for certain categories.
You earn that raise and you earn that job.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next edition of Future Fuzz, a digital marketing podcast with a B2B slant. I'm delighted to welcome Adrian Kingwell onto the show today. Adrian is an entrepreneur, speaker, and mentor known for helping individuals and businesses unlock their potential by embracing adversity. He founded two successful businesses, Mezzo Labs, a leading digital analytics consultancy, and Uplifter, a platform focused on helping individuals achieve personal growth and resilience. In 2022, Adrian sold Mezzo Labs to Mission Group, marking a significant milestone in his entrepreneurial journey. Adrian offers guidance to those facing setbacks, empowering them with courage to grow and succeed. As a writer and speaker, Adrian inspires others to turn obstacles into opportunities for progress. Adrian, great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you very much for joining. How are you doing?
Doing very well, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. So, today we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. Very interested to hear about your journey. Adrian, how did it all start? Where did it all begin? Why did you decide to start your own business?
I think it was something that I always wanted to do. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, but not particularly successful ones. My grandfather ran his own driving school in the 1930s and then started a second-hand car business in Fulham. My father ran his own business after he grew tired of the corporate life. So at the age of 39, he decided to start his own reselling business, reselling machine tools and compressed air equipment in the south of England. And I watched him and the way that he built his business up and eventually exited, and I thought I should be doing that. So at exactly the same age as him, 39, I decided it was time to make the break from a steady corporate job. Actually, it wasn't that steady. It was a fairly lumpy career that I had in sales, and to start my own business.
Great. Okay, so it's inspired from the get-go. When you say you had a lumpy career in the corporate world, what were you doing then, out of interest?
Well, straight after university, I went traveling, which actually wasn't that common in those days because it was a while ago. I ended up in Japan for a year, having traveled through America, and for some reason I thought that I was going to become a film director. So I went back to America to study film for a couple of years and to try and become a successful film director. As you can guess, that career didn't quite work out as planned. And I ended up just having to do some temping work back in the UK in a sales company. And they offered me a full-time job as a salesman. They happened to be in the IT sector. And I spent probably about 10 years selling software. And there was some good times, but there were also some tough times in there. I mean, it taught me a lot about how to get on with people and how to smell the money in an opportunity and how to get other people engaged and to drive things forward. So I think it was really valuable experience. But to be honest, if I was a good salesperson, I probably wouldn't have left that career, because it's definitely not easier running your own business. It's much, if you're good at something, then possibly you should continue to be working for somebody else and be good for it, because becoming an entrepreneur, you have to be pretty good at quite a broad range of things rather than a specialist in one. And fortunately, that plays to my strengths, because I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not exceptional at anything.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, that's an honest stuff. That's an honest answer. Then there was the jump then. I mean, obviously sales gave you that great background and you learned a lot from that. And my background is also sales as well. There were some good times and some bad times, some horrible times when I had to make like 100 phone calls a day, that sort of thing. You probably know all about that as well. How did you make that jump then to Mezzo Labs? Where did you identify a problem and something that needed to be done there, and a gap in the market?
I wish I could say that I spotted a gap in the market, built a business plan, raised some money and went for it. In reality, it didn't work out like that. I was frustrated in the job that I had. I was working for a group of medical recruitment agencies, quite a cutthroat business, a successful business in its own way, mostly because of the female entrepreneur that had built it. But there were lots of things about the business that I really didn't like. And I thought that I could be successful, but in my own way. And so it was out of frustration, really, that I said, if I don't do this soon, if I don't make the jump soon, then the chance might pass me by, and I might wake up one day to find that I'm 55 and regret not making that decision. So what I did was I had a beer with a friend of mine who said, okay, you're thinking of starting a business. While you're thinking about that big master plan, why don't you come and work for me in Barclays as a contractor? And I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. I mean, I guess it'll get me out of my current situation and into a different environment. And so that's what I did. I started working in Barclays. I ran their websites for a bit. Then I built my network of contacts around the people that I met in that particular role. Then after 2 years in Barclays, I decided that it was time to move on. And to expand my business and to look for other clients. And so one thing led to another. I realized at that time that what I'd ended up with was a business that was focusing on digital marketing and that we were particularly good at digital analytics. So it just became natural for me to follow the money and to concentrate on doing the things that we were good at doing. And we ended up building a very successful little digital analytics agency. So measuring the performance of websites, measuring the performance of digital marketing, and helping clients get more out of the data.
Growing a business from the ground up's never easy. Who was your first hire in the team, and then who was your best hire, if you're allowed to say that?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I think in the early days it was difficult to find someone to join me as a one-man band. Actually, what happened was that I ended up partnering with somebody else and sharing the business 50-50. That made it a lot easier to get our second, our third, our fourth hire. Unfortunately, having two people running a small business is, unless you've decided clearly that you have different responsibilities, then you do tend to overlap, and we fell out. And I can't say that I was right, he was wrong, or vice versa. It's just that after 3 years, I think the business needed one voice, not two. And we both decided to split and go our own separate ways. Quite a common thing for founders is that the partnership that they might have started initially, it has a period where it's very useful, and then the business kind of outgrows the partnership. I have seen them succeed as well, where people have taken on very clear non-overlapping roles. Like, for example, one partner's very good with the money and the finance, and the other person's good at winning the business. Something like that, where it's very obvious that you can get more out of working side by side. But where both partners feel that they're running their business, it's very hard.
I mean, I've been there myself, and I've witnessed it myself. In the early days of a first startup I worked in Amsterdam, I mean, I came in as an early team member, and then I was, let's say, offered some shares. But over time, there were arguments with the original two founders, and it happens, right? I think it's more common than people realize, and it's just one of those processes of growing a business, right? You learn from it, you pick up, and you move on. Did you find that after that split took place, that you took a new trajectory and you were able to do different things?
Yeah, I think after I got over the panic of, oh my God, half the business has disappeared with my ex-partner, I felt a new sort of energy that comes from actually having to knuckle down and do stuff and make my own decisions. And I explained to the staff, not that I had that very, very many of them at that time, that I won't be right all the time. You'll get clarity from me. If we're going to do something, we'll do it as hard as we can. If it doesn't work, never mind, we'll move on, we'll do something else. They responded well to that, because I think they'd spent a year or two of getting very confused messages from myself and my partner.
And who was a key team member for you? What position did they play in the business? You don't have to mention any names, but was there any sort of one hire that you made, or the position that was filled in the company, that really made the big difference for the agency?
Without a shadow of a doubt, actually, the more I think about it, it was Natalie, who it was and is my finance director. It's really, really important for anybody starting a business to have good financial advice and to have somebody that supports you through the crises that you're going to have. It's quite normal in business to have certain points where the cash has just suddenly dried up, or that you need to make some very difficult cuts, or you're looking to scale but you've got no idea how to actually raise the finance. And I was extremely lucky in finding Natalie very early on in the history of Mezzo, like within, I don't know, a couple of years of me starting. We were looking for a bookkeeper, and she came in just to sort of put everything into QuickBooks, and then very quickly she said, I can do more than that. I can help you with this, that, and the other. And she effectively became everything that I wasn't. So she could look at contracts, she could look at HR and look at legal requirements around hiring and firing staff. And I don't think without her, I would have made it through COVID, which was for most businesses an extremely challenging time. And my goodness, I think we were down to our last 50p of our overdraft. I mean, we'd literally exhausted everything. And somehow we managed to squeak through by pleading with our suppliers and begging with our customers. And somehow we made it through. And I don't think without her help that would have been possible. So I think she was the key hire for me.
That's an amazing cornerstone to have for a business, right? So that you have someone there to back you up, and you could also work on the business and speaking to clients and speaking to the team and leading the team while there's someone behind you to do those operational things. Yeah, crucial. And I've heard so many stories in the past, and especially about COVID, where agencies, and one that we're working with now, where the team had to get together and they said, right, we've got to get through this similar financial situation. Their clients are all in the travel sector, travel and hospitality. They were completely wiped out, and they sat down everybody and they said, right, we need to get through this. Who's in? Because everyone will have to take a salary cut for a while. And they were all on board. And now 4 years later, because let's say COVID was about 4 years ago, maybe 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
They're now doing incredibly well, and they're seeing amazing growth, and they've all stuck through it. So yeah, that's a really, really, really good story to hear. And a big shout out to Natalie, of course.
Absolutely. Also, I think the advisors that you get, I'm a big fan of having a coach, because normally in a regular job you'd have a boss, and hopefully they're a bit of a mentor for you as well. But when you're running your own business, obviously that isn't an option, or it's maybe if you've got investors, maybe one of the investors might fill that role. But I've always bootstrapped my businesses, and so there's nobody above me. It's just you have internal conversations, but you need to talk to other people about the challenges that you've got, and having coaches to help you through those difficult times is really important. And I've found that it's important to change your coaches. My analogy is it's like tennis players. If a tennis player has a weakness on their backhand, they'll bring in a backhand coach. If their serve is weak, they'll bring in a serve coach. So they will move through the coaches depending on where their perceived weaknesses are, or maybe a strength that they need to build on. And I think it's the same thing in business, is that you can bring a coach on board for 1 or maybe 2 years until you're through that period. You've learned how to do it, and then it's time to change the coach and move on to somebody else.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
That's really, really good advice, definitely, for anyone listening who's starting out 100%. You've sold Mezzo. The company's been acquired. Not many agency founders can say that their company's been acquired, so that's a huge milestone. Talk us through the highlights and the challenges of going through an acquisition, and also any more wisdom and advice that you can pass on. How did it come about, first of all?
Well, first of all, I always knew that I was going to exit at some point. So some people set up their businesses as a business that they will just hold on to forever, or possibly just take a back seat in it. So like become the chairman and then just collect dividends. And that's fine. For me, it was all about building it up to a certain size and then selling it. When I managed to get through COVID, I realized that I built 2 businesses under the covers. I built one that was an agency or a consultancy, a people-based business, and another which was a software business. They were both selling to the same customers, but actually they had very different dynamics and different business models. I also couldn't raise any funding for the software business while it was still connected to the agency, because if you're a venture capitalist, you don't want to invest in something that has high growth potential on the one side, but it almost has an inbuilt inhibitor on growth on the other. So an agency business is hard work to scale. It's very. If you want to double in size, you practically have to double the number of people you've got, and that's challenging. With a software business, if you want to double in size, you just need to spend a bit more on marketing. In theory, I'd made the decision that it was the right time to sell Mezzo so that I could focus on Uplifter, and I knew about 3 or 4 different companies in the market that would be interested in buying us. So I had a coffee with each of them and said, I might be interested in selling. I might actually go through a broker and put this onto the market. Or if you wanted to make me an offer sooner, then maybe I just won't go through the hassle of that. And I got 3 offers back out of the 4. One was very good and the chemistry was right. And it was Mission Group. And there was just something about the company that I thought, are they honest and trustworthy, or are they going to look to screw me out of my earnout? For those of you that don't know, an earnout is absolutely necessary when you're selling an agency business, because it's very rare that an agency business can really truly survive without the founder being around. And so there needs to be a sort of a transition phase. So I managed to negotiate a 2-year earnout when 3 is usually the standard. And everything else looked good. The due diligence took longer than I was expecting, but then again, you never know what questions are going to come back at you. I don't think there are any particular skeletons in our closet. There was nothing to be particularly worried about until about a week before the deal was due to close. Everything had been sorted out, paperwork was all in front of us, and there was one final question that had popped out of due diligence, and that was, could we prove that the building, our offices, had no asbestos in them? And we'd rented offices near Old Street Roundabout in London. And so I went to the landlord and I said, have you got a certificate that says that there's no asbestos in the building? And he said, well, there's no such certificate. You'd need to rip the building to pieces to prove that there was no asbestos in it. And when we did the rehab, we found asbestos and we had it professionally removed. So I can give you a certificate that says what we found, we've removed. So I presented this back to the lawyers and they said, well, that proves that there was definitely asbestos in the building, but there could still be. And if that's the case, then any member of your staff over the last 5 years and any customer that's come into your office could come back now that they know that Mezzo's part of a PLC and sue you for a lot of money because, it's a serious condition. So we had to negotiate a little bit and come up with certain agreements, put some things into the contract. Somehow we managed to squeak through it. But it was one of those things that I wasn't expecting. It completely came out of the blue. Actually, somebody had warned me that doesn't matter what company you're selling, there will be an 11th hour showstopper, and just be prepared for it. When it happens, you will get through it, but it feels at the time like this is it. If everything's for nothing, it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. We did get through it. It was fine. And I've no regrets about selling to the Mission Group. I mean, the transition is never easy because effectively it's the first time I've had a boss for 18 years. So it's not an easy thing for a founder to do, is to start working within a corporate environment and try and hit targets, because the earnout is based on hitting those targets. That's challenging, but it could have been an awful lot worse. And you hear some horror stories, but mine isn't a horror story. It's been good. I mean, the other learning is you probably won't end up with the number that was put on the table in the term sheet in the heads of agreement, because that everybody wants the whole thing to be a success, but the actual valuation of the company at that point is different from the terms of the earnout period. So the targets you're set, the way you're paid against those targets, all of the other bits and pieces that they need to claw back from, the hidden costs that they didn't realize at the time, is all stacked against your earnout. So having talked to a few people, it's pretty rare that you end up with a number that was first put in front of you. It does happen, but for agency businesses, it's pretty rare. So, you have to accept the fact.
Yeah, and also not that common that founders, and especially in the agency world, go through an earnout. Because I was reading a really interesting piece from a guy who writes in the States for agencies, explained that most, especially in the US, because there's some more. It's more commonly find these small to mid-size agencies. The way that the market is set up there, in the UK, they tend to have quite large agency groups, and because the US is a bit more regional, they don't have that as much. But he said the terminology he used was the cash machine. It's the build up the business. The founders run it for 20 years. They go into a sort of a retirement mode, and then they use the company as a cash machine. And then eventually it sort of winds down over time, because like you said, it's very rare to have that situation where the founder isn't involved pushing the business forward. Yeah. I'm curious about the culture fit, because I've heard some horror stories about that. How did you work on that culture fit, or how did you work out that it would be a good fit? Did you all work together some days, or did you do some group sessions together? Because I always had a feeling that if a founder went ahead and said, right, we're going to be acquired, all come along for the ride, there might be some disgruntled members of the staff coming along into that situation.
Yeah, It was difficult to get a true picture of what the culture's like. So what I did was I went to other agencies that have been bought by the Mission Group in the last 3-4 years. And I asked them what it was like. Explain to me how the process worked and what's it like being on the inside of the Mission Group. It turned out that the vast majority of the agencies, there are 19 agencies in the Mission Group, and a large number of them are still run by the founders that sold out many years ago, which I wasn't expecting at all.
Yeah. That's really interesting. How did that come about? I haven't heard of that before.
It's pretty rare. They just said, it's a bit like running my own business, but with the protection of a larger group. So, if we all go through times when cash flow crisis, you don't know whether you've got enough to make payroll. Well, you're in a tight spot. Hopefully the finance team would have been looking at it for some time. They can see that the future's all good, and they will work with you, they'll help you, and they'll get you through the troughs. Of course, they're expecting there to be a few peaks in the journey as well, but they are. It's almost like having a private bank looking after you and understanding what your business is like and how it needs to be funded properly. So I could see why a lot of founders stayed in that environment, because the downside of running your own company is that if you run out of money, like, what do you do? Usually, if you realize you need a loan, it's too late to go and ask for it because your numbers look horrendous. So they always say that you should be looking for a loan when the business is doing really well, because everyone's like really, really happy to loan you money at that point. And I'll be honest, there isn't like entrepreneurial school. There's nobody really teaching you how to do this stuff. You're just picking it up as you go. Bad habits and all. Some good habits, but some bad habits. And I'll be honest, because I had a very good relationship with my finance director, with Natalie, I didn't get too involved in understanding, all the bits and bytes of how to manage the financial side of the business. So coming into Mission Group, where it's a PLC and things have to be done a certain way, it was a really good education for me about the right way to run the business. Very focused on EBIT. Very focused on creating a plan and delivering to that plan. Whereas when you're running your own business, you're like, well, we got a vision for the future, guys, and I got some degree of a plan as to how to get there. And if it doesn't work out, then I'm sure we can sort of fix it along the way. Because but it's obviously different when you're working in a big group, because they're counting on you delivering that number. I think the big learning for me over the last 18 years was that we used to pat ourselves on the back for achieving the results that we thought were important, but actually there's only one result that a buyer of your business is interested in, and that's EBIT. They might be a justification for buying you for strategic reasons, and there certainly was in the Mission Group. They bought Metzer Labs because those other 18 agencies did not have any capability to deliver analytics or marketing automation, and we did. So they bought us so that we could sit in a shared service model in the center of the business and help those other agencies with their clients solve analytics, data, MarTech problems. And that's working. That's working well. So there was strategic reason for doing it. However, at the end of the day, I still have an EBIT number that I have to hit. So it's no good if I say, I've helped everybody else be successful, but my business is tanking. I still have to deliver an EBIT number. And rightly so. Everyone's accountable in the group.
That's really fantastic. Yeah. And it keeps people focused and keeps them sharp. And it's that key word of accountability, right? Because you do often see it that, agencies get acquired, the founders step out and it just falls apart.
Yes.
Or actually, I'm a friend in that situation in a group. The private equity money behind the group says that we'll grow growth by acquisition. But the people that do well are the founders who step out, and then, good luck to the rest of them. And it's good that there's another model out there. Adrian, please tell me a bit more about Uplifter. So as an entrepreneur, you probably love starting up new things. So, but how long has Uplifter been around? It's not that new, is it? It's been around for a while, but tell us more about it.
Well, originally it was, actually, I'll tell you how it started. I was doing lectures in University of Westminster. I'd go in once or twice a year to lecture to the master's students who were working on digital analytics and marketing, primarily because I was interested in recruiting some of them as graduates. And then one day somebody said to me within the university, had I thought about getting involved in a knowledge transfer program, a KTP? And this is something that's a government grant that's available to businesses who can partner with the university to tackle a project which is not something that they'd normally be able to do. So a skill that they don't naturally have internally, but they can get the university to help them plug that skills gap. It fit very well around building a product. And I'd always thought that although we were into data and analytics, we were very weak on data science and AI. And this is about 6 or 7 years ago when people were talking about it, but not a lot, it was well before ChatGPT. So I thought there's an opportunity to create a knowledge transfer program project around AI. And so we partnered with University of Westminster. We got the funding. Effectively, 50% of the costs are covered by the government and 50% to cover myself. So it's like getting a data scientist for half price is the way that we looked at it. So we started building a tool that would sift through Google Analytics data to try and spot anomalies. It was an anomaly detector. And in order for the thing to work well, it needed to sort out the traffic that was coming into a website through campaigns. So if you run a marketing campaign, it could be a little bit of paid media, a little bit of social media, some email, but all of that traffic should be tracked properly. So when we showed our clients the product, they're like, so how are you sorting out this problem of tracking the traffic coming in? And we built this kind of front end that would help people build what's known as a UTM code. And they immediately said, oh, we'll buy this product because we love that UTM code tool on the front end. I'm like, well, what about the clever stuff in the back end? Oh, yeah, that's interesting. But to be honest with you, we've got a problem right now, and it's just tracking those campaigns properly. Like, oh, okay. That was not what I was expecting at all. Other clients have Mezzo, and they all said the same thing. Please help us sort out the day-to-day tracking of traffic into our website, because it's not done well, it's not done consistently. We just can't basically measure the campaigns that we've got. So we went into one of our clients, I won't mention the name, but they reckon that 50% of all of the traffic that came to their website that they paid to deliver to their website was not being tracked or was being incorrectly tracked. The trouble was they didn't know which 50% it was. So they had to pretty much throw all of that data in the bin because they couldn't trust any of it. So they brought in Uplifter to sort out that tracking problem, and now 95% of their traffic is tracked. It's a huge uplift in their ability to measure the performance of their marketing and to identify what's working and what's not working. All we've done since then is listen to what our customers have asked us to do. So our product development really just comes from feature requests, and we've ended up building really the gold standard in campaign tracking. It's a niche. It's not the next big thing because it's a problem that's been around for years and years, but it's absolutely necessary. And the bigger the organization, the bigger their problem. So we tend to find that our really good clients for us are multinationals because they struggle to tell people in France, Germany, and Italy that they need to be tracking their campaigns in the same way that head office in London tracks their campaigns.
Across the whole board. Yeah.
Across the whole board.
And it's where does the business come from there? Is it coming through referrals, or are people coming to the site, SEO? Where do you find that the new business comes from there? Because it's very different from the mission group, isn't it? It's SaaS that you're selling there. It's
SaaS, and we wanted, we drank the Kool-Aid, so we thought, let's build a SaaS product where basically you give it out for free to start with, and then you tease people onto one user and then 5 users, and then. But actually, it's not one of those products that sells well like that. It's a product where we need to target major enterprises. So actually, it is more traditional lead gen activities that produce leads for us.
Right.
We do have people come in at the bottom, and every once in a while, they become big opportunities for us. But the vast majority of people that sign up for a free copy stay on a free copy. And unfortunately, when you've set the expectation it's a product that you can use for free, if you're prepared to accept that the free version doesn't give you all the bells and whistles, that's very often where people end up. That they're very loath to start paying for something when their expectation is it's something you shouldn't have to pay for.
But then that does help, of course, with you've got quite a large top of funnel then, and then within that you're looking to find your large enterprises who really do have a problem and they need to be spoken to. So I can imagine quite a consultative sell in the end, would you say? Yeah.
Yes, but it's exactly at the end of the day, it's a consultative sell because you've got to look at the way that an organization's currently trying to do it and then explain to them this would be so much better if everybody just logged into the same platform and used the same method for tracking everything. What we usually find in a large organization, there is one person who really cares about this stuff, or possibly more, but there's one person that will champion it for you. Unfortunately, they rarely have.
Who is that typically?
It's usually someone in the digital analytics team, because they are the one that gets hammered when a marketer says, I just spent a huge amount of money on this campaign. Why is Google Analytics not showing me what's happened to that traffic? And the answer is because you didn't track the campaign correctly. But the person that gets blamed for it is in analytics. And that he said, quite rightly,
they don't have a budget, maybe. Yeah,
they don't necessarily have the budget for it. They do sometimes. That's where a salesman comes in to try and stitch together, join the dots. And also we're trying to build things into the product that are of more interest to the senior decision makers rather than the analysts who are at the coalface, who understand the problem, but unfortunately don't always have the budget to solve it.
Yeah, the joys of selling SaaS to your enterprise and large organizations. And then IT get involved, and then they've got an opinion as well, and often IT holds the budget. Fascinating.
I think we all want it to be a frictionless sort of product-led growth kind of story around our businesses. In reality, I think in the B2B space, there's really not very many. Salesforce, for example, or Pipedrive, CRM platforms. You can find yourself a cheap way of getting onto those platforms, but ultimately you will get a phone call from somebody that says, let me demo the platform to you. Who else is involved in this decision-making process? What are your timescales? What's your budget? All the usual sales questions.
Indeed.
Because it works.
Yeah, and it's about building, people buy products. Robots don't buy products yet. We've got a feature guest who's convinced that robots will be buying from one another sooner than we think. Adrian, we're coming towards the end. Have you got any last pieces of advice to any budding entrepreneurs out there, or even entrepreneurs that have been running businesses for a while, looking to exit? Do you have any, golden nuggets of advice that you'd like to pass on?
This is based on my experience that you have everything to gain and very little to lose from talking to people. I belong to a number of different networks, and I've been involved, as I mentioned before, I've had coaches, I've had peer mentoring groups. Being able to just share experiences is terrifically valuable when you run. It's very lonely running your own business at times, and you can't share everything with your staff, even your senior leadership team. There are certain things that your fears and worries, the things that are keeping you awake at night, not all of them you can share with the people that report directly to you. So I think it's really important to have channels of communication, relationships with people who are outside the organization that can give you some degree of perspective. One of my best coaches, to be honest with you, he didn't tell me really how to run my business, but he would sit and he'd listen to everything I say, and then he'd just nod his head and he'd say, Adrian, this is normal for business. I'm like, no, but Peter, I'm sure I'm the only person that's going through this problem. My problem's unique. It's like, we've all been there. We've all done it. You will get through it. Stop worrying. And he was right.
That is brilliant.
Where there is a tendency for us to catastrophize when it's our own business. And this is what keeps us awake at 3 a.m, is that amygdala in your brain that says it could all go to hell in a handbasket tomorrow, and you lose your business, you lose your house, you lose your marriage, your wife will take your children away from you. And for some reason, at 3 a.m, right, we think this is actually going to happen. And then what I learned over the years is you wake up the next day a bit tired because you didn't get a good night's sleep, and you will absolutely kill that one thing that was keeping you awake at 3 a.m. There's something about that whole process which just sharpens you up and says, right, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to win. And after a while, having been through quite a lot of sleepless nights, every time it happens to me, I'm like, oh, bring it on, because tomorrow I'm going to kill this thing.
You're ready for it. The resilience is there. Fantastic. Adrian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Really, really interesting. Some fantastic insights there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure for me as well. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.